Well, hello there. I didn't see you come in. Make yourself at home. Have a drink. While I give some attention to some underappreciated characters and storylines that I personally love. And I hope you grow to love as well.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. Today we are reading Swamp Thing, number 156. And just a little catch up on what's been going on in the last couple issues. Swamp Thing has met a girl named Anna, who apparently was a short story writer, but wasn't able to write very good endings to her short stories. And she has been cursed to live inside each of these stories until they are finished. And Swamp Thing got tangled up in all of this, so he decided to help her so that she can finally be free of this curse, and these stories would be finished. So Swamp Thing has helped her with 4 of these short stories, and we are on the 5th this week. So first things first, with this cover, there is a white blonde-haired man who is standing in what looks like a swamp, and he has found Swamp Thing's body. It looks like he's trying to pick it up, and in the background we can see a barn. So this looks like it might be some sort of retelling of the origin of Swamp Thing. And we also see on the cover that this is written by Mark Miller with art by Phil Jimenez and Kim DeMulder. And we turn to the first page and we see that this starts in Michigan, USA. And we see a white red-haired woman talking on the phone, and she's saying, "Nobody can hear us, Mom. You can say anything you like. Lieutenant Cable fitted one of those scramblers to the phone this morning. Oh no, he's really nice. He stayed most of the afternoon and ate all our chocolate cookies. Poor Alec didn't get a stroke of work done all day. Yeah, I know. Anyway, it's getting late. I'd better go or I'll never get up in the morning. Tell Dad to look after himself, okay? See you soon, honey. Bye." So as she gets off the phone with her mom, we see her walk into the living room where a white blonde man is sitting in a chair. And he looks pretty exhausted because his eyes are closed. And as she walks in, she says, "So how's our big project coming along, baby?" And the man answers, "Christ, why can't the world just leave me alone?" And then she sits on the couch next to him and says, "Oh, come to bed for God's sake. Have a good night's sleep for a change." And kind of annoyed, he says, "What's the point? It isn't going to look any better in the morning. The whole thing's a total disaster. Why did they have to send us here? It's freezing cold and the whole crappy barn must be riddled with dampness and wood lice. No wonder I can't get any work done." And she replies, "Hey, come on. Work isn't everything, you know." And then she walks over to him and kneels down in front of him and begins to unzip his pants. And he says, "Oh, no, Linda, I'm really not up to this right now." But she insists, saying, "Will you shut up and relax for once? Leave all the dirty work to me for a change." Then we get a panel of him leaning his head back and closing his eyes. So it's not really graphic, but obviously she's going down on him. But in the background, we see a little girl appear in a doorway. Then we get a panel of her eyes getting really big, like she just saw something she probably shouldn't have. And then the mom sees her and yells out, "Anna!" Then we turn the page and we see the mom is walking Anna awkwardly back to her room. And she's saying to Anna, "What are you trying to do? Give your poor mom a heart attack? You should have been asleep hours ago." And Anna replies, "I'm not tired. I want to stay up and watch TV for a while." But the mom isn't having that. So as Anna crawls back into bed, she says, "Come on, Pumpkin, be a good girl, go back to bed. Daddy's not feeling well right now, and he needs a little peace and quiet." So as Anna tucks herself in, she says, "All right, I just wanted to show him one of the old comics I found in the cellar. It's got a scientist in it called Alec Holland, and he even looks a little like Daddy." And then the mom takes the comic in hand and says, "You're kidding. That's weird, honey. This is the one you're talking about?" And Anna says, "Yeah." And as the mom looks at it, we can see it now. And it is the first issue from the first volume of Swamp Thing from the 70s. And if you don't know what that cover looks like, it's Swamp Thing bursting out of the water while a man with a gun holds a woman hostage and points the gun at Swamp Thing. And then Anna says, "And you know something even weirder? His wife's name is Linda." And in seeing this comic, we now know where we're at. In case you didn't know, in DC Comics, there are many different multiple Earths, and one of them is called Earth Prime. And that Earth is our Earth, or real reality. So this is like the real analogs to the comic book characters that we've been reading about for 156 issues. So this is the real Alec Holland and Linda Holland, and they have a child named Anna. And of course, Earth Prime is going to have similarities to the comic, but also differences. For example, the first one we saw is this issue is taking place in Michigan, but in the original Swamp Thing issue, that was in Louisiana, of course. But we do see that Alec Holland is working on something. He is a scientist. And from the conversation that Linda was having with her mom, we heard that Matt Cable is around and he's guarding them like he was in the first issue. So as we turn the page, we see Alec Holland working in his laboratory, and he's poking at a dead plant in dry dirt as he looks at his notes on his computer screen. And over these panels, we get the writings from the journal of Dr. Alec Holland, and it says, Linda and I have been working on the bio-restorative formula for 6 months, and we probably know less about molecular biology now than the day we arrived. I think they're going to cut off our funding soon. Feeling totally depressed. Opened the last of the sample trays I prepared last month and almost burst into tears. A successful hybrid between the wheat seeds and some isolated cactus genes would have meant crop fields even in the most barren deserts. Instead, all I produced was another dead plant. Then we see Alec get very angry and he picks up the tray with a dead plant in it and he throws it to the ground and yells, "God damn it!" And then he begins to pour himself a drink and the journal entry continues. The seeds were modified by introducing a virus into the wheat chromosomes, but the recumbent DNA just wouldn't form. Felt kind of upset. Poured myself a glass of bourbon to clear my head. Purely medicinal, you understand. So as he takes a drink of that, we turn to the next page, and we cut to him, totally drunk, drinking from the bottle, shirtless, and he's wandering through the woods in the rain, and it seems like the woods have flooded a bit. And the journal entry continues saying, "Actually, I think I might have had more than one glass." Then we get a very drunk and angry Alec Holland wading through the shin-high waters in the forest, and he's saying, "Screw the lot of them." But then from behind him, someone says, "Dr. Holland?" And Alec turns around and sees Matt Cable standing in front of him and says, "Lieutenant Cable? Jesus Christ, is that you?" And we can see Matt Cable standing in the rain, of course, but he's got a raincoat on, unlike Alec, who is shirtless. And he says to Alec, "Yeah, sexy outfit, huh? What are you doing in all this rain? I thought you were a prowler or something." And Alec replies, "I'm sorry, Matt. I'm really not feeling too good right now. Things haven't been going well at work. And, well, I've been kind of drinking a lot lately." And as Matt finishes his slurring, Matt Cable notices something out of the corner of his eye, and he turns his head quickly to see what it is. And Alex says, "Matt, what's wrong?" And then Alec's journal entry says, "Cable didn't answer. He just stood there blinking like an idiot. Personally, I almost had a heart attack." Then we see Matt Cable raise his flashlight up so Alec can see what caught his attention, and we see what looks like the body of Swamp Thing. And I think it's beginning to grow because its arms haven't fully formed, and at the moment, it's just his torso and head that are coming out of the ground. And we also see on this page that the name of this issue is River Run Chapter 5, Darker Genesis, which is actually a callback to the first issue of Swamp Thing, which is called Dark Genesis. So as we turn the page, we cut to the laboratory of Alec Holland, and we see Matt Cable and Alec are standing in front of a table with Swamp Thing's body on it. It also seems that Alec is sobered up from the shock of seeing Swamp Thing's body, and he's put on some new clothes to get dry, and he says to Matt Cable, "Thanks for the help. I never would have been able to carry this thing back here on my own." And Matt Cable replies, "No problem, Dr. Holland. I'm as anxious as you are to find out what it is." And Alec says, "I wouldn't like to say without a full autopsy, but I'm pretty sure this is some kind of plant." Then we see Linda Holland walk in as well, and Alec says to her, "The humanoid growth structure isn't like anything I've seen before. It could be the inspiration we've been waiting for, Linda." And Linda just seems kind of grossed out because she says, "Yeah, well, it makes me feel kind of sick. I really wish you hadn't brought it home." And then Matt Cable says, "Oops, sounds like a good time to leave. I guess I should be out there protecting you guys from rival companies anyway." And then he puts his jacket to go out, and Alex says, "Thanks again for your help, Matt. I'll keep you posted." And then Matt leans down to get one really close look at Swamp Thing's face, and as he squints at it, he says, "You know, maybe I'm crazy, but I can't shake the feeling I've seen this guy somewhere before." Then we cut to the woods outside of the barn where Alec and Linda's laboratory is, and we see a car hiding in the shadows, and inside of it someone says, "Will somebody please change the tape? This gangster rap shit's driving me out of my mind." Then we cut to the inside of the car, and we see three men arguing in it, and the one in the backseat saying, "Aw, come on, that's totally racist, Jaffa. You don't like Black Lion because they're black guys. Just like you hate Michael Jackson and every other black musician on the face of the planet." And Jaffa replies, "Don't call me racist, man. I videotaped every movie Eddie Murphy ever made. I just hate rap because it's shit. Simple as that." And I should describe these three guys. They're all white. The one named Jaffa is sitting in the front passenger seat, and he is like a larger, heavy-set man with long brown hair and a ponytail. And the man in the back seat is the one that was accusing Jaffa of being racist, and he just looks like an average white guy from the 90s. Kind of plain, short curly hair. And then the guy in the driver's seat who hasn't spoken yet, who seems to be the leader, has long dark hair, that's also back in a ponytail, and he's got a little mustache, and he's got a dark black leather jacket on, which lets you know he means business. And he definitely looks agitated while the two others argue. And he actually notices Matt Cable leave the barn and begin to drive away, and he says to the other two, "Will you two shut the hell up? Cable just got in his car, okay? It's almost time to go to work." And then he lights a cigarette, and he has an evil smirk on his face, and he says, "Right. I figure we got half an hour in there. No time for any mistakes. Our babysitter expected me home by 11, and I'm already 3 hours late, okay?" So all three men get out of the car, and as they're preparing, the young man says to the driver, "No way I'm busting the lock this time, Steph. Not in these new shoes. Somebody else can do it for a change. What about guns? Don't you think we should carry something in case these pricks give us any shit?" And Jaffa says to the young man, "Lighten up, Dave, okay? These guys are scientists, man. Not Jean-Claude fucking Damme." Then we turn the page and we cut to Alec Holland with a bloody face being mashed into the carpet. Then we pull out and we see Jaffa is sitting on Alec's back, and he's the one who's mashing his face. And he's saying to Alec, "What's the matter? Does this hurt? Are you having trouble breathing, Dr. Holland? I bet your heart feels just about ready to burst." And we can see in the background that Steph and Dave have Linda and Anna, and both of them are crying as they watch Jaffa assault Alec. So Steph, the leader who's holding onto Linda's shoulders, says, "Come on, cut the bullshit. That FBI guy will be driving past again in 10 or 15 minutes. Then we cut to Jaffa, who's holding a cigarette very close to Alec Holland's eyes, and he's saying, "Aw, please, Steph, just let me stub my cigarette out in his eye. I love the little noise they make when you do that." And Steph replies, "You know what the chemical company told us, Jaffa. This is only supposed to be a warning. Besides, I've got a better idea." And we see an evil smile creep onto his face. Then we cut to Jaffa and Dave, and they're holding the family in front of a doorway, and I believe the door is to Anna's room. And we see Dave say, "Oh my God, what's he doing in there? I don't believe this guy." Then we see Steph walk out of the room, and his pants are undone, and he's fanning his arm behind him, and he says, "Smell it and believe it, man. Now let's go." So basically, Steph went into Anna's room and defecated in there. And Dave, the young guy, thinks this is hilarious, and he says, "Oh, Christ, that's terrible." Then Steph gets really serious, and he looks at Dr. Holland, and he says, "This was only a social call, Dr. Holland. Next time we won't be so friendly, okay? If you're still here next week, we're going to come back and fuck you up good." And then they walk out of the barn, and Dave says, "Come on, Steph, let's go." And then Steph yells back to Holland, "I fucking mean it, Holland. You got 7 days to find another job." Then we cut to the family inside of the barn, and Anna's freaking out, and she's saying, "Oh, Daddy, look what they did on my bed." And then Linda runs over to her and holds her tight, and Alec begins to cry, saying, "Oh, Jesus." Then we turn the page, and we cut to the next day, and Linda's on the phone, finishing her conversation, and as she hangs up, she says, "This is ridiculous. They said they can't assign any more agents to the project for at least 2 days. I told them we were almost killed last night, and they gave me some crap about cutbacks. Jesus, do they really expect Matt Cable to patrol this whole place on his own?" And she's saying all this to Alec, who's at the table with Swamp Thing's body on it, and it looks like he's about to perform an autopsy. But he sets down his scalpel, and he walks over to Linda, and he says, "Right now, I just want to forget about everything and get back to our mysterious plant man. I don't think I can handle any more nasty surprises." And just as he says that, all of a sudden, the body of Swamp Thing becomes animated, and Swamp Thing leans up and says, "Please, leave this place. Get out before it's too late." And Alec and Linda are just staring at this with their mouths agape, and they are in total shock. And Linda actually runs outside, and she begins vomiting. And as she finishes, she comes back in, and Alec says, "Are you sure you're okay? I might have something in my drawer to settle your stomach." And as Linda wipes her mouth, she says, "I'm fine, honest. I just didn't expect it to talk, that's all." And then Swamp Thing's limbs begin to grow, and he stands up off the table, and Alec looks at him and says, I'm sorry about that. My wife, she's just a little freaked out by this, you know?" And Swamp Thing replies, "I understand. My presence in this reality must have startled you both." Then we cut to outside a little while later, and Alec and Swamp Thing are walking in the woods together. And Swamp Thing is explaining his story to him, saying, "I have entered a different dimension at every stage in my journey along the Mississippi, but this one feels furthest from home. There is no magic in the air, no superhumans in its skies. Of all of the parallel Earths I have visited, this world needs my help most of all. And Alec asks, is that why you're here? Are you going to repair the environment? Did you come here to save the world? And Swamp Thing answers, no, I believe I was sent here to warn you. I must make sure a terrible personal tragedy does not repeat itself. And at this, Alec's kind of confused and he says, but I thought you might be able to help me finish my bio-restorative formula. There's probably enough secrets hidden in your body to complete the whole project. This planet's dying. Soon there won't be any animals left to eat or anywhere safe to live. This process I'm working on could change everything. And then Swamp Thing looks at him very seriously and says, it will change nothing. And then he grabs Alec by the shirt and he pulls him to his face and he says, don't you understand? You will never finish the formula. The big corporations won't allow it. You and your wife will die here if you stay any longer. I cannot stand back and watch as you are murdered again. And then out of nowhere, Anna calls out, it happened to you, didn't it? On another world just like this one. And then Swamp Thing's shocked and drops Alec to the ground. And Anna continues saying, you were called Alec Holland just like my daddy, and you were working on the same project. It's all written down here in this old comic book. And then Swamp Thing walks over to Anna and he kneels down to be face to face with her. And he says, yes, that's right. My name was Alec Holland. Tell them what you know about me. And Linda is also here. And when Swamp Thing kneels down and gets close to her daughter, she kind of freaks out and says, Alec, don't let that thing touch my baby. But Alec tries to calm her saying, it's okay. It's all right. He won't hurt her, I promise. And then Anna says to Swamp Thing, your name was Alec Holland, but bad men set you on fire and dumped you in a swamp. That's when you became a monster, and that's what you think's gonna happen to my daddy. And to this, Alec says, this is insane. It's just a dumb story in a stupid old comic book. That doesn't mean it's gonna happen in real life. And Swamp Thing stands up and looks at him and says, you are wrong. The sequence of events is already falling into place. Examine your heart carefully, Holland. You know deep inside what I'm saying is true. But Linda and Alec just kind of stare at him blankly, and Swamp Thing points at them and says, it seems that one of the purposes of my journey these past few months has been to correct a number of mistakes. Tonight, I have been given one final chance to erase the biggest mistake I ever made. Then we see the Holland family watching Swamp Thing walk away into the trees, and the journal of Alec Holland says, we stood back and watched as he walked away and disappeared into the trees. A mild sense of deja vu struck me for a moment as he waded into the deep, icy waters. And then it was gone. Then Linda turns to Alec and says, so what do we do now? And Alec replies, I say we pack our bags. We're getting out of here first thing in the morning. Then we cut to somewhere in the middle of nowhere in the forest, and we see an abandoned car, and as we zoom in on it, we see that it is very bloody, and all the windows are broken, and this looks exactly like the car Matt Cable drove away in. Then we see Swamp Thing appear, and he opens the trunk, and he finds the body of Matt Cable bound and naked, and upon seeing this, he knows something bad is going to happen to the Holland family tonight. Then we cut to the bedroom of Linda and Alec Holland, and in the dark someone says, Dr. Holland, you remember we said you had a week to get out? Then the lights click on, and we see Steph, Jaffa, and Dave standing in the doorway, and Steph says, slight change of plan. Then we see Anna's door open up as she hears noise as the three men fight and wrestle with Alec, and Linda's yelling, saying, you bastard, get away from my husband. And Jaffa yells back saying, shut up, just shut up and listen. And then he forces Alec to his knees, and Steph gets really close to Alec's face and he says, this wasn't our idea, you know. It's nothing personal or anything. The people who pay our wages just decided things would be easier if you two were dead, that's all. And then Linda begins to freak out and she screams, please, don't do this. We didn't mean to get in anyone's way. I swear, for God's sake, we were just doing our job. And at that moment, Steph stands up and he pulls out his gun and he says, yeah, me too, lady. And he shoots Linda in the head, and she is for sure dead because basically her head explodes. And upon seeing this, Alec freaks out and says, "Oh no, Linda! For Christ's sake, no!" And then Jaffa, who was standing behind Linda when this happened, looks down at his feet and he sees they're covered with Linda's gore, and he says, "Nice going, Steph. You knew these shoes were only 4.5 days old." And then Anna begins to scream, and Steph turns around kind of shocked by this, and he says, "Oh shit, I forgot about the kid. Somebody catch her before she gets away." And then Dave volunteers saying, "Relax, Steph. Leave it to me." So as Anna runs out of the house, we see Dave running behind her yelling, "Come back here, you little bitch. Don't be stupid. You're only making things worse for yourself." And she runs deep into the woods and hides. And as Dave searches for her, he says, "Oh, come on. I'm too tired for this bullshit. You must be pretty scared, huh? The other guys are kind of mean, but I'm not like that. I don't want to hurt you. Cross my heart and hope to die." But as he's saying this, he's pulling out a knife. And as he scans the woods, he sees Anna's pink dress, and he begins to walk towards her slowly, holding the knife out in front of him, and he says, "Come on, there's no point in hiding behind that tree. Let's go back to the house and sort this out like adults." And then Anna says, "Did you hear what he said? I think he just called you a tree." And it turns out that she's not hiding behind the trunk of a tree. She's hiding behind the leg of Swamp Thing. And Dave realizes this too late. Of course, he doesn't know what Swamp Thing is, so he's just kind of frozen in fear as he stares at this big humanoid plant monster. Then we cut to back inside the house, where Linda is still dead on the floor, and Alec is crying as he's tied to a chair, and he's looking at her body. And as Steph gets a liquor bottle and puts a cloth in the top of it, he says, "What's the matter, Dr. Holland? Doesn't your wife turn you on anymore?" And Alec is just staring at her body, crying, saying, "Oh God, Linda, I'm so sorry." But Steph walks in between them, and he looks at Alec and says, Forget her. There's plenty more fish in the sea. If I were you, I'd be more concerned about what I plan to do with your best bottle of bourbon here." And we also see Jaffa in the background, and he has a gas can in his hands, and he begins pouring gasoline all over the bio-restorative formula documents in the laboratory. And Steph continues saying, "You see, the guys who hired us didn't just want you two out of the way. They wanted to see this whole project go up in smoke." And then he smiles as he strikes a match, and he begins to light the cloth at the top of the bourbon bottle, and he continues saying, "Burning to death's a really horrible way to die, you know. I won't pretend otherwise. I can tell by the look on your face that you're starting to get the picture here. Still, what the hell? At least you'll be able to keep your old lady company." And just as he says that, we get a really cool panel of Steph's eyes as he sees something to his left, and his eyes move that way, and we see the reflection of Swamp Thing in them. And Jaffa also sees Swamp Thing, and he says, "So Steph, what the hell is that?" And Steph doesn't answer because he is in shock. He is looking at Swamp Thing with extreme fear on his face, and because of this, he forgets that there's a bottle of bourbon with a burning rag at the top of it in his hand. So as he stands there, the cloth burns down and the bottle ignites and explodes in his hand. And he yells, "Oh shit! Oh shit, my fucking arm!" But it is not just his arm that's on fire, it's his whole upper body. So he takes off out of the doorway and he runs into the forest and into the water that's there. And he's yelling for help, but no one's coming to help him, of course. Then we come back inside the barn, and Jaffa is just looking out of the door saying, "Steph?" And the Swamp Thing looks at Alec Holland in the chair. He says to Jaffa, "It is too late to help him now. Nature demanded a sacrifice tonight, but destiny made a most unusual choice." And then he reaches down and he unties Alec, who's still crying, and he's so heartbroken he can't even walk. So Swamp Thing picks him up kind of like a baby, and he begins to walk outside with Anna walking in front of him. And as they approach the water's edge, Swamp Thing says, "Stand away from the water, Anna. A new swamp monster will rise again in a few moments' time." And as Anna watches the bubbling water, tears begin to fall down her face, and she says, "No, he won't. Not here. Things like that just don't happen in the real world." Then we see Swamp Thing walk into the water, and he pulls the body of Steph out, and it seems like Anna was right. The body is just smoldering, nothing is growing or beginning to change. And as Swamp Thing realizes this, he turns his attention to Jaffa, who also walked out, and vines begin to overtake him, and we can assume that Swamp Thing kills him. But we don't see what happens further, and we cut away to a building that says Linda Holland Research Unit. And we get some more journal entries over this scene, and it says, "Even now, 1 full year later, I don't know what made him change his mind, but the monster finally listened to me. The Swamp Thing donated his body to science. He gave his life in the hope that one day we might develop the bio-restorative formula. Who knows? Maybe he just decided the real world could use a little hope after all. As for me, well, I couldn't stay in Floodwood, not with all its memories of my poor Linda. Instead, we decided to make a clean break with the past and head south. So in these panels, we're seeing at the Linda Holland Research Unit, Swamp Thing's body is being tested on, and then we see a station wagon driving south on the interstate, and there's a sign that says Louisiana 34 miles. Then we cut to a big plantation house, and we see Alec Holland is inside and he's typing on his computer, and his journal entry continues saying, Louisiana's climate is perfect at this time of year, and our new house is just beautiful, although oddly familiar. The girl who sold it to us was an Eastern European with shock white hair and the most beautiful smile. God forgive me, but I swear our hands sparked as we touched. I worry it's too soon, but I've been thinking about giving her a call. In truth, I could use a little company, and I think having a woman around the house would do Anna a world of good. What the hell? It doesn't mean I love Linda any less. Then we see Alec Holland print something, and he puts that printed letter in an envelope, and we see it is addressed to Abby Arcane in Houma, Louisiana. And the last journal entry says, "Here goes nothing." And that, my friends, is the end of the issue. And I don't know about you, but I thought that was a pretty cool take on what the Swamp Thing story would be in the real world. I especially like how at the end, Steph's body doesn't rise as a new elemental or anything. He's just dead. So we'll have to see what adventures Swamp Thing gets up to in the next story. But until that time, if you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email me at planestrains.and-comicbooks, all one word, @gmail.com. And remember, until next time, stay swampy.